As psychology professor, 3 years ago, Arohi used to sit on the cold floor of her tiny apartment eating instant noodles for dinner while editing videos on an old broken laptop that overheated every 20 minutes. Nobody believed in her dreams. Not her relatives, not her friends, not even the people who once promised they would always support her. Every time she talked about becoming successful someday, people smiled politely, the way humans smile when they secretly think you're unrealistic. Be practical. Life isn't a movie. You should focus on something stable. She heard those sentences so many times that eventually she stopped telling people her plans completely. And honestly, that silence became her biggest strength. Every night while the world slept, Arohi worked. Hours and hours alone. No attention, no applause, no audience cheering her on. Just exhaustion, self-doubt, and a tiny, dangerous belief inside her heart that maybe her life could become bigger than the pain surrounding it. Most people only see success when it becomes visible. They never see the lonely process before it, the crying, the failures, the humiliating moments nobody posts online. And maybe that's why success changes people psychologically, because the version of you that survives years of struggle cannot think the same way forever. One rainy evening, Arohi received a message from her uncle. Still wasting time on videos? She stared at the screen quietly, then closed the phone and continued editing. That moment mattered more than anyone realized, because rejection changes ambitious people deeply. When humans constantly feel unsupported, their brains slowly stop expecting emotional safety from others, and over time, they begin depending entirely on themselves. That psychological shift changes personality permanently. Arohi slowly became quieter, more emotionally distant, not because she hated people, because disappointment had trained her to survive alone. Months turned into years. Her videos barely received views. Sometimes she worked for 16 hours straight, only to earn almost nothing. But she continued anyway, and honestly, most people would have quit. But pain creates dangerous determination in certain humans, especially people who secretly feel they have nothing left to lose. Then, one random night, everything changed. One of Arohi's videos suddenly exploded online. Thousands of views became millions within days. Followers increased rapidly. Brands started contacting her. People who ignored her for years suddenly remembered her existence. And slowly, the entire world around her changed. But the strangest part wasn't the fame. It was how people treated her afterward. Relatives who once mocked her suddenly sounded proud. Old classmates suddenly started messaging her, pretending they always supported her dreams. Even people who disappeared during her worst moments returned, smiling warmly like they never left. That's when Arohi learned one of the darkest truths about human psychology. Success doesn't only reveal your real character, it reveals everyone else's too. At first, she felt happy. Finally accepted, finally respected, finally seen. But over time, something strange started happening inside her. The more successful she became, the less emotionally connected she felt to people. And honestly, that terrified her, because she remembered who she used to be: soft-hearted, emotionally available, trusting. Now she found herself analyzing everyone's intentions constantly. Why were they suddenly so kind? Would they still care if she lost everything tomorrow? Did they love her her or the successful version of her? These questions slowly consumed her mind. And psychologically, this happens to many successful people. Success changes your awareness. Before success, you wonder who supports your dreams. After success, you wonder who secretly benefits from your success. That mental shift creates emotional distance. One evening, Arohi met her old friend Mehek after almost 4 years. Back during college, Mehek rarely replied to her messages, ignored her struggles, disappeared during difficult times. But now, sitting across from Arohi in an expensive cafe, Mehek smiled constantly and said, "I always knew you'd become successful." Arohi almost laughed because deep down, they both knew that wasn't true. And in that moment, Arohi realized something painful. Success changes people because it destroys illusions. You begin remembering who ignored you when you were struggling, who secretly doubted you, who only returned after your value increased. That awareness changes how safely your heart attaches to people. For the first time in her life, Arohi understood why many successful people become emotionally distant. It's not always arrogance. Sometimes it's self-protection, because success attracts attention, but not all attention comes from genuine love. Some comes from envy, some from convenience, some from opportunity. And intelligent people eventually learn to recognize the difference. One night, while scrolling through old conversations, Arohi found years-old messages she once sent friends asking for emotional support. Most were ignored, seen, forgotten. And suddenly, tears filled her eyes, not because she was sad anymore, because she realized she survived moments completely alone that nobody even noticed. That realization changes humans deeply. When people abandon you during your lowest moments, your brain never forgets it completely, even after success arrives. Psychology explains this clearly. Humans develop emotional defense systems after betrayal, rejection, or prolonged loneliness. And success often strengthens those defenses because suddenly everyone wants access to you, your time, your energy, your influence, your success. That's why many successful people slowly become more selective, quieter, harder to emotionally reach. Not because money changed their soul, because survival changed their psychology. But Arohi still believed one thing. She believed success would eventually make her happy. She thought maybe the pain would finally disappear once life became easier. But she was about to learn the most painful lesson of all, because success changes more than relationships. Sometimes it changes the way people see themselves. And what happened next in Arohi's life completely changed her understanding of human nature forever. If this story touched your heart, subscribe now, because somewhere out there, millions of people are silently fighting for dreams nobody else believes in yet. Like this video, share it with someone who is struggling quietly, and remember, the world often ignores you while you suffer, then suddenly loves you once you succeed. A few months after becoming successful online, Arohi moved into a new apartment overlooking the city skyline. The same girl who once counted coins for dinner was now receiving brand deals worth more money than she had ever imagined. And yet, something inside her felt strangely empty. At night, she still sat alone near the window, staring at the city lights the same way she used to before success arrived. Only now, the silence felt different, heavier, because success solves financial problems faster than emotional ones, and nobody talks enough about that. People think successful individuals become distant because fame makes them arrogant, but psychology reveals something much deeper. Success changes your environment so quickly that your mind struggles to trust reality anymore. Suddenly, everyone treats you differently. People listen more carefully, compliment you more often, respect you more. And honestly, that can become psychologically disturbing when you remember how invisible you once were. Arohi noticed this everywhere. Waiters treated her better after recognizing her online. Relatives suddenly invited her to family gatherings they once excluded her from. Old classmates who ignored her existence now reacted to every post she uploaded. At first, it felt satisfying, like life was finally becoming fair. But slowly, it started hurting, because deep down, she kept asking herself one painful question. If success disappeared tomorrow, would these people still care about me? That question haunted her constantly. One evening, Arohi attended a networking event filled with influencers, entrepreneurs, and celebrities. Everyone looked confident, perfect, happy. But after hours of conversations, she realized something strange. Almost every interaction felt performative. People smiled while secretly comparing status, complimented each other while silently competing, pretended to care while calculating usefulness. And for the first time, Arohi understood another dark psychological truth about success. The higher people rise, the harder genuine relationships become. Because success attracts admiration, but also hidden envy. Many people can love you when you're struggling beside them, but once you rise higher, something uncomfortable happens psychologically. Your success reminds others of their own insecurities, and insecure people often react in painful ways. Some become distant, some become passive-aggressive, some secretly wait for you to fail. That's why successful people often say they lost friendships after growing, not because they changed first, but because growth changes relationship dynamics. A few days later, Arohi met her cousin Sana during a family dinner. Years ago, Sana constantly mocked her dreams, but now she kept praising Arohi loudly in front of everyone. "You're so inspiring. We always believed in you. You've become so successful." Arohi smiled politely, but internally something felt cold, because memory doesn't disappear just because people suddenly become kind. That's another reason success changes people emotionally. Your brain starts remembering who was absent during your hardest battles. And once you see people clearly, it becomes difficult to love them blindly again. That awareness creates emotional distance, not intentionally, naturally. One night, Arohi received a long, emotional message from an old friend named Kabir. Years earlier, when Arohi struggled mentally and financially, Kabir slowly disappeared from her life. Now, suddenly, after her success became visible online, he wanted to reconnect. At first, his messages sounded nostalgic, then emotional, then supportive, and finally, he asked her for help getting connections through her influence. Arohi stared at the screen silently, because suddenly she understood something painful. Success doesn't change everyone around you equally. It reveals who valued you genuinely and who only values access to your success. That realization changes a person deeply. Psychologically, humans crave authentic emotional connection, but success often creates uncertainty around people's intentions. Do they admire you genuinely, or do they admire what you can provide for them? That confusion slowly makes successful people more guarded emotionally. And honestly, guarded people often look arrogant from the outside, but many are simply protecting themselves. Arohi noticed this happening slowly within herself. She stopped replying quickly, stopped trusting compliments easily, stopped sharing personal struggles publicly. Not because she became selfish, because success had taught her how quickly people's behavior changes when your value increases. One evening, while sitting alone in her apartment, Arohi opened old videos from her early struggling days. She watched herself smiling through exhaustion, pretending not to feel broken. And suddenly, tears rolled down her face because she missed that version of herself. Not the pain, the innocence. Before success, she believed people loved people. After success, she realized many people love status, influence, beauty, and usefulness more than souls. That realization damaged her trust more than failure ever did. And psychology explains why. Humans naturally seek social advantage. Successful individuals unconsciously become symbols of security, opportunity, validation, or status. That's why people suddenly behave differently around them. Not always maliciously, sometimes subconsciously. But emotionally intelligent people notice these shifts quickly. And once they notice them, relationships stop feeling emotionally safe. A week later, Arohi visited the old neighborhood where she once lived during her struggling years. Everything looked smaller now. The broken shops, the narrow streets, the tiny apartment building where she once cried alone, wondering if her dreams were stupid. And while standing there quietly, she realized something heartbreaking. Success had changed her life, but it had also separated her emotionally from the person she used to be. Because surviving years of rejection changes your nervous system permanently. You stop expecting unconditional love. You stop trusting support too easily. You stop believing attention automatically means care. And slowly, you become emotionally harder to reach. But Arohi still had no idea that her biggest psychological lesson about success was still waiting ahead. Because the most painful changes don't happen when strangers treat you differently. They happen when success begins changing the way you see yourself. And what happened next, honestly, scared her more than failure ever did. 1 year after becoming successful, Arohi had everything she once prayed for. Money, recognition, millions of followers, people constantly praising her online. The same world that once ignored her now watched everything she did. And yet, every night before sleeping, she still felt something missing inside her chest. Not sadness exactly, just emptiness. The kind of emptiness success was supposed to erase. That realization frightened her more than failure ever did. Because all her life, she believed happiness was waiting on the other side of success. But now she was standing there, and happiness still felt temporary. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Arohi saw an old photo from her struggling days. She was sitting on the floor beside her broken laptop, smiling tiredly at the camera. No makeup, no luxury, no audience, just dreams. And suddenly, tears filled her eyes because she missed that girl. Not because life was easier back then, because she felt emotionally real back then. Before success, her life was painful but simple. People either ignored her or supported her. Now, everything felt psychologically complicated. Every compliment made her question intentions. Every new friendship felt uncertain. Every relationship carried hidden doubt. And slowly, Arohi realized something terrifying. Success had not only changed people around her, it had started changing her from the inside too. Psychology explains this perfectly. When humans experience rapid success, their identity often struggles to adapt. Your external life changes faster than your emotional system can process. That creates inner conflict. Part of you still feels like the insecure person from your difficult past, while another part realizes the world now sees you differently. And that disconnect can become emotionally exhausting. One night, Arohi attended an award event filled with famous creators and celebrities. Cameras flashed everywhere. People laughed loudly, pretending to enjoy every second. But while standing there, smiling for photos, Arohi suddenly felt completely disconnected from everyone around her, like she was watching life happen from outside her own body. That's when panic quietly entered her mind, because she realized something dangerous. She no longer knew who genuinely cared about her anymore. Success had made her visible to the world, but emotionally invisible to herself. Later that night, Arohi returned home exhausted and sat silently in darkness without turning on any lights. And for the first time in months, she allowed herself to admit something honestly. She was tired. Not physically, emotionally. Tired of questioning people's intentions, tired of performing happiness, tired of pretending success automatically heals loneliness. And during that silence, Arohi remembered someone she hadn't spoken to in years, her mother. Back when Arohi struggled financially, her mother was one of the only people who quietly stayed beside her. No motivational speeches, no dramatic promises, just presence. Even during moments when nobody believed in Arohi, her mother still cooked dinner for her late at night while she worked endlessly, chasing impossible dreams. And suddenly, Arohi realized something painful. The people who genuinely love you usually loved you before success arrived. That's the difference. Real love recognizes your soul before the world recognizes your value. The next morning, Arohi visited her mother unexpectedly. No cameras, no social media posts, no audience. Just her. When her mother opened the door, she smiled exactly the same way she used to years ago, before fame existed. No extra admiration, no changed behavior, just warmth. And honestly, that almost broke Arohi emotionally. Because for the first time in a long while, someone was looking at her like a human being instead of a successful person. While drinking tea together quietly, her mother suddenly asked, "Are you happy?" Such a simple question, but Arohi couldn't answer immediately, because deep down, she didn't know anymore. After a long silence, her mother smiled softly and said something Arohi would never forget. Success changes people when they start forgetting who they were before the applause. That sentence hit her harder than anything else, because suddenly everything made sense. Success itself wasn't destroying people. Ego was, fear was, validation addiction was. And psychologically, that happens because humans begin attaching their self-worth to external attention. The more praise they receive, the more terrified they become of losing it. And fear changes personality. People become defensive, arrogant, emotionally distant, obsessed with image. Not because they're evil, because they're scared. Scared of becoming invisible again. Arohi realized she had slowly started living for validation instead of peace, checking numbers constantly, overthinking public opinion, feeling emotionally controlled by attention. And honestly, that's one of the darkest psychological effects of success. The world begins rewarding your image more than your inner self. And if you're not careful, you slowly lose connection with your real identity. That night, Arohi returned home and did something unexpected. She turned off her phone completely. No notifications, no social media, no internet. Then she opened her old notebook from years earlier. Inside were dreams she had written before success happened, and one sentence immediately caught her attention. "I just want a peaceful life and people who genuinely love me." Arohi stared at those words for a long time, because somewhere during the chase for success, she forgot what she actually wanted emotionally. And maybe that's the final lesson most successful people learn too late. Success is beautiful, but if you lose yourself while achieving it, the victory starts feeling empty. Over the next few months, Arohi slowly changed her life again. Not publicly, privately. She stopped trying to impress everyone, stopped forcing relationships that felt fake, stopped measuring happiness through attention, and slowly, peace returned. Real peace. Not the temporary excitement applause creates, but the calm feeling that comes when your identity no longer depends on the world's approval. And finally, Arohi understood the real reason people suddenly change after success. Because success magnifies whatever already exists inside them. If insecurity exists, success intensifies it. If ego exists, success feeds it. If kindness exists, success reveals it even more. Success doesn't magically create a new personality. It exposes hidden psychology that was always there. And maybe that's why some successful people become arrogant, while others become wiser, calmer, and more grateful. At the end of the day, success is just power, and power always reveals character. So if someone changes after becoming successful, look carefully. Maybe success didn't change them at all. Maybe it finally showed you who they truly were underneath the struggle. And honestly, that realization can change the way you see human nature forever.